Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name is Emma Lefebvre and today I'm going to show you how to make a beginner's color mixing chart. So let's jump right in and start. Okay, so today I'm going to be showing you how to create a color mixing chart. So for this, you're going to need a pencil, eraser, a ruler, a paintbrush, watercolor paper, watercolors. You can use all of the watercolors that you have, or you can pick just a few, and a mixing palette. So for the watercolors that I chose, I'm actually using Daniel Smith's limited palette. It came with watercolor ground, but it's actually the perfect mixing palette because it comes with a cool red, a warm red, a cool yellow, a warm yellow, and a cool blue, and a warm blue, which is great for mixing. I am going to do a separate video on mixing these colors in different combinations and why they make the colors they do. But for now, these are the colors that I'm using. So I'm only going to be doing a grid that is 6 by 6. And like I said, you can use all of the watercolors you have. If you have a palette of 20 colors, you can definitely do it. You're just going to need a much larger paper and to make your squares a little bit smaller. So I'm also using that little roll of masking tape. It's really, really thin. You don't need the masking tape to do this, but I kind of wanted to have these little white spaces in between. So that's what I'm using. But for this, I'm going to make a grid that is 6 inches by 6 inches. Each square is going to be 1 inch long and wide. So, and I have 6 colors. So I'm making a square 6 by 6. Again, if you're using more colors than that, if you have 8 colors, you're going to make one that's 8 by 8. If you have 20 colors, you're going to make one that's 20 by 20. That's going to give you an idea of how big you actually have to make it. But you can also make it not 1 inch square. You could do 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch. Totally up to you. But this is just how I'm doing it. So I'm making my grid and I'm marking each inch of how the squares are going to be, and then I'm going to draw the full grid. So now that I'm done drawing the full grid, I'm going to use that little thin masking tape that I will put down in the description below. I got it off Amazon. You don't need this. Like I said, you can definitely do it without. The only reason why I'm doing this is because I think it's going to look a little nicer and it'll be easier to paint in the squares without them touching and bleeding into each other. Otherwise, what you're going to have to do is when you're filling in the squares with their color mixes, you're going to have to do squares that are not touching each other. So you can't do 2 colors that are touching each other at the same time unless you leave a little bit of white space, because then they will bleed into each other if they're both wet at the same time. This just helps kind of separate those colors so you can do them in order. Otherwise, just do random mixes in a different order that are not touching each other so they don't bleed into each other. I hope that makes sense. So this is why I chose to do it like this. But again, you don't have to. I've done plenty of these charts without them. And you can always just eyeball it and go in the square and not like fully to the edge of the square so they don't touch the other squares. Okay? Okay, so that's the next step. Okay, and then for our next step, we are going to write the color names along the side and the top. So you want it going in the same order. So as you can see, the first square on top and to the side are both Hansa Yellow Light. Then you go New Gamboge, I hope I'm saying that right. Then Quinacridone Rose, then Pyrrole Scarlet, then Phthalo Blue, and then French Ultramarine. That's the order of mine. So just make sure they're in the same order. And you're going to kind of fill this chart in kind of like, remember those math charts, like a times table chart, and you just, to find out the answer of this plus this or this times this, you follow the grid. It's the same kind of thing. So the first thing I want you to do is fill in that center diagonal line with the pure color. So the difference with this chart, instead of doing the same color 2 times, and you'll see what I mean, the same mixes 2 times, you're going to make one side of it a really light wash, and then the next side of it, it's pure wash. So it's like saturated color. So here, as you can see with the Hansa Yellow Light, I started with a light wash over the whole square, and then I went in with the pure yellow, a lot darker on the bottom half. So The bottom half of that diagonal is going to be like its dark value color, and then the light half of this whole grid is going to be its lighter value color, if that makes sense. So I found it the easiest to just do the light wash first. So here I'm doing the New Gamboge. Is that how I'm saying it? I don't know. Doing it all light, and then I'm just going to go back in with some more color and then make the bottom half of that diagonal its pure saturated color. And you're just going to follow the grid down the diagonal, see how they meet there. So quinacridone rose is going to be there. Pyro Scarlet's going to be right there. You just follow it, and that's how you know where to put the pure color. Okay, so you're just going to continue to do that. And then we will start with our mixes. Okay, so now that we're done with our pure color diagonal here, we are going to start our mixes. So this is how you do it. You have to find them on the grid. So our first mix here is going to be New Gamboge and Hansa Yellow Light. So what I kind of like to do, which you'll see in a second, I kind of count how many squares down of this color I'm going to mix. So you can see there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I am going to create 5 different little puddles of the Hansa Yellow Light for my mixes around my palette. So I'm going to start off with that. It'll just be easier than having to go back into this color all the time and just grab some. And these are where we're going to mix the colors. So wash off your brush, grab your next color, and you start mixing, and you're going to place it in that first square. Okay, so I want the most pure saturated color in the bottom half of this diagonal. And then you're going to see the top square is the same mix, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to lighten it, so a lot more water. So you also can see the lighter value, what that looks like as well. So you'll know once you refer back to your color chart, you can look at a color on there and say, ooh, I want to make that color. And you can look and see what it looks like as a lighter value as well as its more saturated dark value. So then we just continue with our next color. Our next color is Quinacridone Rose. So I'm just mixing that with my Hansa Yellow Light. Again, going to put the more saturated, darker value in the bottom half of the diagonal of the chart. Taking up all that paint to make it as nice and dark as I can. And then just wet my brush a little to get that lighter value where it belongs. Okay? And you're just going to continue doing this throughout the whole chart. And honestly, this is one of the more relaxing things to do with watercolor. If you don't know what to paint and you haven't made a watercolor mixing chart, I highly suggest it. It's very relaxing. You can put on a show, put on music, and just mix your colors and get to know your palette a little better. So I am going to just fly through this a little bit faster so you can watch, have some relaxing music. Once I'm done using all the Hansa Yellow Light in my palette, I will just wipe it up with a paper towel and then make room for new mixes. But yeah, this is basically how you do it. One more thing I will add is that sometimes you need to add a little bit of that first color. What you're striving for is to get a mixture of half and half. So almost equal amounts, or as equal as you can, of each color. So that first one with the Hansa Yellow Light and the Phthalo Blue, it was more on the blue side, so I needed to add a bit more of the Hansa Yellow Light to get a half and half mix. So just remember, you're trying to do equal parts to get that right ratio of mixing for this chart, and that's my little tip for that. So if you have to add a little bit more of one color to get that equal parts, do it. And now for the more satisfying part, taking off that tape. See how the lines just look a little bit more crisp. Like I said, you don't have to use the tape if you don't have it. I didn't have it for the longest time. I will quickly show you what it looks like without with one of my other watercolor charts I've done, but that's about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video and you learned something. These are great to have in your room as a piece of art even, or just for reference of color mixing, especially if you're a beginner, and it'll definitely be very helpful in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I really hope you liked it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on Instagram for even more. Have a great day, guys. Bye.